Hello, you're listening to part 2 of Robyn Rocket's Zoom Zoom with Jem Freeman. My name is Robyn Rocket, and in this podcast series I interview artists who inspire me. This is part 2 of my interview with Jem Freeman of Jem Freeman and the Cosmic Something. In part 1 we heard about their early life and how they were in a band with their friend George when they were at university called the and now we're going to find out more about what happened to that band and how they progressed their career in music.
I guess from university, I started work in a charity shop. I worked in a charity shop on the Old Kent Road. Still doing gigs. We met somebody that was recording us, and we spent a really long time recording it. So I left university and I had to start work. But something went a bit wrong with that relationship. Like the guy recording us suddenly refused to release any of our music unless we gave him like a third of the songwriting credit or something, and it was just all really messed up, and it really broke my heart because I was very young and I'm very naive and I didn't know what to do, and we basically lost all that music. We spent 3 years recording with him, and we should have realized that, you know, people don't just record things for you for free, but also it didn't sound like how we wanted it to sound, and then to be faced with that was really disappointing.
And did that band with your friend George release anything?
We'd released a couple of things on a little label called Angular Records, and they had been involved in all the kind of New Cross scene, like Block Party early on and Claxons and all of that kind of thing. They were all kind of mates and stuff.
And so what happened to that band?
It kind of fell apart a bit, like through like various kind of bad decisions of working with other people, and it kind of lost its drive a bit, which was a bit sad. And I got a bit heartbroken. I didn't really know what to do because music had become very integral to my life. It was like my way of socializing, basically, and it still is. Like, you know, lockdown was a disaster for me because I really don't know how to meet up with people. Can't just meet up with people for no reason. I have to be doing music, really, or doing something music related so that I have a structure, I understand.
So when that band finished, what did you do next?
Weirdly, my brother had just finished uni at Bristol, and his girlfriend at the time was in a band, and they needed a bass player because they weren't happy with their bass player, or their bass player didn't live in London or something. I can't remember.
And did you already know how to play bass?
After I got like a guitar, I think probably maybe a year after or something, I went and bought bass guitar as well. So I taught myself bass. I used to play along to like drum and bass. I had various ways of recording myself. I've always recorded music, funnily enough. Never thought anybody would ever want to play with me. So that's why I didn't really have a band until I was about 20. I just couldn't imagine how you ever get anybody to want to play with you. I didn't understand that you just ask people. Like, that didn't occur to me. No one had explained that to me, and nobody had given me reason to think that like they might want to. So I learnt to record music before I learnt really to play it live or collaborate with people in a room. So I taught myself bass, when I was probably like 16 or something like that.
So you joined your brother's girlfriend's band to play bass?
Yeah, I joined as the bass player, and Eloise was a violin player, and she played like other bits and pieces. We had some glockenspiels at one point, which we had, I think, a charanga or something like that. Like, oh no, not a charanga. Charanga's the little one. Anyway, we had some really unusual instruments for a bit. So I didn't really even know what their music was like, and I just said yes because I needed like an outlet. I was like, right, well, at least I'll end up doing something, and it's not something that's close to my heart where I'll get heartbroken. Like, it's something where I can just go and do it, and I know I'll be able to play it. It's kind of folky thing. I think when I first joined them, they didn't even have like a proper name, and they were called like Heloisa Music, and then they changed it to Lulu and the Lampshades. So we were called Lulu and the Lampshades for a bit, and then we got a drummer. And then we just kind of just took off, and we kind of did quite a few gigs and stuff. And we got record deals was with Bella Union, which is incredible. We changed our name to Landshapes. I went from something that I had just joined on a whim to being in something that I was really invested in. We were writing songs together like really, really regularly. I was in Landshapes for like a decade, basically.
And at that point, were you doing music full time?
I then became manager of charity shops and managed my own one in Catford. So I was doing that full time, and then sort of 2 evenings a week at least I was rehearsing with them, and then also doing gigs, and then we're also doing things like touring Germany. So I just used up all my holiday, and it's the same now. I still work full time, and I use up all my holiday basically doing gigs, traveling to places. So it was not a job. We didn't get paid enough, and we didn't get paid at all to start with. First time we didn't get paid at all. And then we were very lucky to get a publishing deal. So we got less money than my charity shop wage, which, if you know what a charity shop wage is like, that's not very much. For 2 years, I lived on an absolute shoestring. Then I had to go back to work because we didn't get another publishing deal. So it did become like a job because it's what we're doing full time. We were like doing radio. We toured America.
What was it like to be a musician full time?
It was fantastic because I struggle very much with having a 9 to 5. I think for those 2 years, it was really fantastic actually, because I could basically do whatever I want and do the thing I love. So we were rehearsing maybe like 2-3 times a week for like 7 hours at a time. We'd have like a rehearsal studio with everything kind of mostly set up, and we just go and turn up, and it was really, really amazing. We kind of worked incredibly hard. I learned a lot in that period of time, like playing that amount of music that intensively. You kind of really get to a granular level. It's almost like a cellular level of music, I think, when you are playing that closely with people for that long. We made some really, really interesting stuff. It was really exciting. And yeah, I really liked it. But I was so poor. I was living in like an illegal sublet in the smallest room you've ever seen. I had to like get a mezzanine bed so that I could actually fit my guitars in the room with me. And then there was about half a meter between the bed and the wall. It was like ridiculous. Like, so on one hand it was like very freeing and really exciting, but then quite a lot of the time it was really extreme poverty. Like, you know, it's funny because when you are in a band like that and you're in, like, you know, your picture might be in a magazine and you might be on the radio, and people make assumptions about what success looks like. On the one hand, yes, that was very successful, but I don't know how successful I was being as a human being. I think I was very, very challenged. Committing that level of energy to something and then not really having any way to look after yourself is quite challenging, and not having strong like networks around you to support you and things like that. I'm quite isolated in many ways, partially down to being like autistic and not really knowing how to make proper connections, or not even that. I do make proper connections, not knowing how to ask for help. On the one hand, I learned a lot. I don't think I was doing very well mentally or physically at that time.
Do you have any good stories from being on tour that you'd like to share with people?
Our van got broken into in New York. That was like probably one of the weirdest things that's ever happened to me, having my stuff stolen. So then we had to go around and do like a supermarket sweep of New York. I think we borrowed someone's credit card and just bought all of our pedals because we were in the middle of our tour. That was actually quite cool, like having something that kind of shook us up and kind of brought us all together like that. We've had a lot of weird stuff happen. Like, I don't know, as a band we kind of seem to attract like quite weird things. Strange things happen when you're kind of like these loose balls of energy just traveling around in a van. Like when you're on tours where often you don't know where you're going to play, and like your booking agent will book places, and you know, sometimes it's like you'd go from like one night it being completely packed to another night it being this like amazing venue, like pristine, a brilliant sound engineer, like really cool equipment, and like 3 people turn up. That was always quite strange. I remember like in Germany we did a show like that, and I jokingly said to the audience, can you all line up in height order? And they did, which was quite weird. This German audience was really massively compliant, and my bandmates got really cross with me. They were like, you shouldn't have done that. And I was like, but I didn't think they were actually going to do it, but they did. We got chucked out of like a massive palace, basically. It's like aristocratic German family that hired us for this private party. We kept jumping in and out the window because we couldn't be bothered to ring the doorbell, because it meant that like a literal servant would come and open the door, and we didn't really like that, and so we got chucked out. But our green room had all these stuffed animals in it, like an entire alligator, and the carpet on the floor was a bear and a zebra, like a real one. It was quite weird.
So what happened to the landshapes?
Well, lockdown essentially. So we had been working for ages on like a 3rd album, which we released in the middle of lockdown. And so our drummer moved back to Newcastle, and it just was almost impossible to try and do anything more. And as well, we'd all kind of just started doing our own projects and things as well. For that album, it took a really long time to mix because we were working with Quez, and he's very, very busy. And so it took a bit longer than we thought, and we spent longer thinking about what we wanted to do with it. So by the time it came out, we were kind of really all invested in our own other projects, which had been going on for like a couple of years by that point. So I think we kind of it's just kind of on a hiatus, really.
How did you get doing the projects you're doing now?
We knew we weren't going to go on tour for ages or do anything live for a bit, because our drummer had moved back to Newcastle. So I knew I needed to do something live, because it's really essential for me to be able to play live music. I need to do that in my life. And so I was trying to decide whether or not to like join somebody else's band or what I should do. And my partner at the time was like, well, you write songs, why don't you do those? And I just thought, well, no one will want to listen to my music, and no one will want to see it, and no one will want to be in a band with me. But all of those things were untrue. So I started my band.
And because you also play with Wendy Ray Fowler, how did you meet her?
I met Wendy because I lived in the kind of Deptford area through a friend of a friend. So like there was the little tiny venue, that's where I met you, at Vinyl. But that's how I kind of met Wendy, through that kind of collection of people like Simon, Yorkshire, and all of that kind of crew.
How about Guts?
Guts, they just came to my gigs and I used to go to their gigs. They needed a new guitarist and I said, well, I'll do that. I can do that. That's how I joined Guts. Then how on earth did I end up playing bass for Brian? Oh, Brian I met again at Vinyl. Yeah, their bass player ended up not being able to keep doing stuff for various reasons, had like family commitments. So I don't know how I got asked to do that. Somehow, probably something to do with Vinyl, Deptford Vinyl. Deptford Vinyl was basically instrumental in my current musical things I'm involved in.
You said before about performance being essential for you. And what is it about performance that you like? Why is it so important in your life?
I think performing live is the space where I get to kind of disappear. Like I overthink everything and I can get into a bit of a pickle with that. Like my brain works quite fast, but not necessarily processing anything particularly useful or beneficial for my general well-being. I'm always processing a lot of data. There's a lot coming into my brain. Like I'm one of those people that if somebody's lost something in their house, I know where everything is in their house more than they do. Someone's like, oh, have you seen the scissors? I'm like, yeah, sure. They're on top of the microwave next to an orange, which he put there on Wednesday. You know, this kind of idea of like, you know, autistic people have like having unusual memories and being, you know, Einstein like it's not like that. I remember really stupid, pointless stuff. Like I can tell you where there's an elastic band on the floor underneath like the door in the kitchen. Not useful things, but I can tell you where they are. If you need an elastic band, that's where it is. But with that in mind, my brain is a very busy place. Yeah, like sort of hypervigilant and very kind of self-aware all the time, kind of concerned about how I'm being perceived and how I am behaving, you know, like trying to be social when you're a teenager, like, you know, was horrendous for me. I don't know how to do it. And I just knew I was getting it wrong all the time. And so I have this very like scarred kind of inner place where I'm just like, you don't do this right. And you're probably being weird. So I'm very critical and like kind of always I'm stuck in a sort of feedback loop when I'm in social situations, things like that. It's very busy. I need to make that stop. When I'm playing live, playing music, that doesn't happen. I disappear. I go away. All this stupid like chatter, all that nonsense I just made you listen to, like that all goes away. And when it is good, I find that there is just this synchronicity. For that moment, everybody in that room is sharing that same moment with you. When you play that note, when you do that thing, when you sing that phrase, when you string together that whole bunch of things or create tension or shift energy in a room, if you do it right, everybody is with you at that moment and they're all perceiving and we're all receiving and we're all giving the same kind of thing at the same time. And you all get to disappear for that moment. And there is freedom and light and energy when you are kind of lifted and you transcend your kind of like human form. And not even just your human form, your human format even. So you remove yourself from your formatting, from your programming, from your restraints, from the shackles of your own mind. You are gone because you can be free with music. Music does not judge you. It just happens to be. It just exists. And then it's gone. And if you grab hold of that and you flow with it and you're in that way, then you can be light and flowing like that energy. So playing live when it goes well, that's what you kind of can tap into there. There's also freedom of like, you know, pushing boundaries, pushing like being weird. Your behavior on stage, all of it's pretty, you know, to some extent is acceptable. It's a performance. It's part of like, you know, within reason, of course. You can be who you say you are to those people at that time. I am this, and I'm going to tell you that that's what I am, and that's what my whole performance is. And people will take you at your face value of what you're saying. Like, you are that, and you have just told me that you're that. You're doing a performance, so I believe you. I had like a sort of drag character I perform in a sort of weird clowny type of drag, I suppose. Delivers all of the kind of confidence and attitude and assertiveness that I wish I had, what feels like audacity to deliver in my day-to-day life. I mean, obviously I don't mean like doing like knee slides. I channel all of the kind of assertiveness I wish I had within that character, and then also whilst playing music. I don't really know how it works, like an alter ego, literally, because I think I am kind of a slightly divided character in that my day-to-day life I wish I was less tremulous and more intrepid, I suppose. I think I am in a quiet way. I think parts of myself are slowly joining together, becoming one synchronized human being. But I think for a time, at least, that stage presence was a way of living authentically, weirdly, where I couldn't live authentically in my personal life. I had some things going on that meant I couldn't fully be who I was. You know, my gender or my sexuality or even my neurotype to some extent, you know, was not really fully expressing any of those elements of myself, and stage was a safe place to do that.
Robyn Rocket's Zoom Zoom podcast with me, Robyn Rocket, and my guest, Jem Freeman. I'd like to thank Jem for their time, and also the executive producer, Paul Dutnall, and funding from Arts Council England, who made this possible, and for you for listening. Bye bye.